Okay, hello. Now we're online for real for our live stream, and we're going to start to do this crazy new thing, fun new thing called last week's horoscopes. Why would you want to know last week's horoscopes? Don't you want to know next week's horoscopes or this week's horoscopes? Well, the reason why you kind of want to know last week's horoscopes is because you want to see if it works. Because you already know what happened last week and what it was like last week, right? So that's one thing, is you want to know if you could rely on the horoscope. Once after we do a bunch of last week horoscope sessions and we start to get it to be like, yeah, this is cool, then let's start doing next week's horoscopes. So I want to do at least a couple of sessions of last week's horoscopes so that we can explore how you do horoscopes in a way that makes them work, and to what scope do they work. Yeah, so that's why we're going to do that. And also, it's helpful to retrospect, isn't it? It's also helpful to retrospect and see, well, what the heck happened last week? So it's also not useless for you either. So you guys will be helping contribute to understanding how horoscopes work, how to do them reliably. You'll be learning how to do them reliably, and you'll also be retrospecting on your previous week. Now, before we get into the horoscope thing, there's 4 things I want to tell you about. The first thing I want to tell you about is that I'm participating in. So the first thing I want to tell you about is something that's going on at astrologyhub.com. So I'll put a link in the chat. www.astrologyhub.com/Vic. What they're doing is we're going to have this in like this week or next week, the 15th, 16th, and 17th. We're going to have like a forecast of 2019 from like a dozen different astrologers. I'm going to be doing the December cycle, right? But I'll be on this week to talk about what I'm going to be talking about in December. But what everybody's doing is looking at the cycle, the cycle for that month being from the full moon to the new moon, back to the full moon. And what I'll be doing, which is different than the other guys, is I'll be doing nakshatra-based version for that. Which brings us back to the topic of horoscopes. You know, I think that Vedic astrology has a lot to offer to the technique of how to do a horoscope, like a weekly horoscope or something, which is underutilized. So in case you haven't noticed, this is not a Ask Me Anything session. We're going to be talking about horoscopes. And so that's one thing. We're going to do Astrology Hub, the 2019 predictions, you might say, or forecast. Go over there. Go to that link, Vic. Go to astrologyhub.com/Vic, and you'll be able to see what that's all about. The other thing I wanted to tell you about is super cool. I hope it didn't go off. It says my video is unavailable. I hope I'm still on. Let me just make sure. Can you still see me? I'm fine. Okay, the second thing I want to tell you about is this great opportunity in the Maldives Islands in June. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Maldives Islands, but it's the kind of thing you hear about in like a James Bond movie. The Maldives, it's like some super fancy rich person's retreat resort place. But what this one person is doing is organizing a yoga and astrology retreat there, so you could actually afford to go. So it's still going to be kind of expensive. It's around the $3,000 range for 8 days. And there's an option, I think, for people between 18 and semi-age, like a younger person option, for a little bit of a less fee that doesn't include food. But the $3,000 type fee there is like includes everything, including tons and tons and tons of seminar. So let me tell you what I'm going to be doing there. I'm going to be doing 40 hours worth of seminars over that 8-day period. And it's going to be, the 2 morning sessions are going to be about Vedic philosophy and mythology. And the 2 afternoon sessions are going to be about astrology workshops. So there'll be astrology level 1, which is like planets, signs, houses, nakshatras. And the level 2 workshops will go on like how to interpret planets in a sign, how to interpret planets in a house, how to interpret lords in houses. So I'll be doing tons of stuff there. So if you think, well, $3,000 is a lot of money, but if you look at the prices for astrology courses, to be able to do like a level 1 course and a level 2 course and a philosophy course, it's going to come close to $3,000 anyway. Then you get to go to the Maldives Island and stay in some fancy, beautiful place and eat good food, vegetarian, vegan food, for like a week on the beach. It's actually worth saving up some money for. So that's the second thing. If you want to find out more about that, gosh, I should have the link handy. Next week I'll give you a link. It's going to be in June. Now, what's the third thing I wanted to tell you about? The third thing I wanted to tell you about was my book. I'm actually getting in gear, and I'm checking off my checklist to get that Nakshatra book. Remember the Life Lessons series? So the Life Lessons of the Vedic Nakshatras, that series, a video series on YouTube, is now finished. But now the book is going to come out. So I finished writing it. I finished formatting it. Now I got to just do a couple of edits. So by the beginning of February, that'll be available on Amazon. And I had a fourth thing I said I wanted to tell you. I don't remember. So let's get started, huh? Want to get started with the stuff about horoscopes? We're going to learn how to do horoscopes. Let's see. Let me first tell you about what a horoscope is. Actually, let me move this to the opposite side, because it's kind of right on top of my face. I kind of shifted my my location around a little bit. All right, so what's a horoscope? Well, first of all, the word is a total misnomer. The horoscope really means birth chart. The word hora, you might notice, it has a lot to do with, you might, oh God, I hate Japanese pumpkin. Somebody asked me for a recipe of Japanese pumpkin. Horoscope, you might notice the word hora has to do with hour. Or in Vedic astrology, we still call the hours horas. The 24 divisions of the zodiac, 24 hours. Well, it's called a horoscope because the hour is, you know, the hour by the angle between the sun and the ascendant. So it's called, scope means to see, right? So it means looking at the ascendant. So ascendant-based astrology is called horoscope. Why a horoscope? Why does it become? Why has this word come to be used to mean the predictions for the week or the predictions for the month or something? Just because there's no actual logical reason why this word means that. But what we're talking about when we say let's do a horoscope, it means let's make a prediction of what your month's going to be like, or what your week's going to be like, or daily horoscope, what your day is going to be like. According to something, right? Usually it's like according to your sign, according to your sun sign. If you're a Leo, then today's going to be great. But if you're a Virgo, today's going to be terrible. If you're, well, they'll never tell you that, right? They'll always tell you, like, if you're a Leo, you're going to have opportunities with blah, blah, blah. And if you're a Virgo, you're going to have these other opportunities with blah, blah, blah. So that's the basic structure of how horoscopes work. They have some like scope of time. How long is this horoscope for? Is it for today? Is it for the week? Is it for the month? Is it for the year? And they have some scope of individuality. This, you know, if you're a Leo, that kind of thing, scoping the individuality. So, horoscopes. If you go to Vedic astrologers, sometimes you won't get a horoscope, you'll get a horoscope, because they can be really blunt about saying very negative things sometimes, because the culture is much less frivolous, much less fragile. In India, people in India are much less fragile. So, but when a foreigner goes over into the Indian culture, the fragility there gets cracked. So you can get a horoscope. Flavia wants to know about my chart. You could look at my chart. It's easy. It's all over my sites. I'll probably put it up today. I always use my chart as an example. So, right, so let's talk about what scopes we're going to use, or try to use, get started. So basically, when you do a horoscope, there's 3 possible. See, now also one thing you should know from the beginning is, how do people do horoscopes? For the most part, they're using transits. Oh my God. For the most part, they're using transits to tell you the horoscope. There's other techniques that I might not be aware of, that other astrologers might be possible to do it with progressions and other kinds of things. I don't know about that. But for the most part, the way I know about the way a horoscope would be done, it's by looking at the transiting planets and then making it relative to some kind of point. And the point that you make it relative to is the individuality scope. So why is it that newspapers or the scrolls, what are those, astro scrolls? That was my exposure to astrology as a kid, was from 2 places. My mom's Cosmopolitan magazine and that like bubblegum machine at the supermarket that had paper in it instead of bubblegum. And I was fascinated with it because the paper was rolled up in a scroll, and I loved scrolls. So I used to put my 10 or 25 cents into that bubblegum machine sometimes just to have a piece of paper that I could unroll. And then I would look at it. How would that work? Was it not a bubblegum machine? Maybe it was a fancier machine where you would select the sign that you are. But I remember it was like an automated machine and would give me these little star scrolls. So how is that individualized? That was individualized based on the sun. So, wow, Stellar Yoga Arts has an interesting horoscope story that I have to share with you. She's sharing it in the chat. Somebody made a joke that it's a horoscope, and I said, yeah, a lot of times Indian astrologers give you horoscopes because they're so unfiltered. And then she said, yes, she got told that her husband was going to kill her, and then she said, and then actually he tried to kill her, but failed because she was alerted. Well, I'm sorry to smile and laugh, but it's pretty amazing. So, right. So, what are you going to do to make a horoscope? You're going to check a transit. Now, you're not going to be able to do a horoscope for an individual. She says she tried 3 times. You should not. Oh, hopefully you got some distance from him after the first time. Anyway, let's not talk about that. You're not going to be able to make a horoscope for an individual unless you're doing a one-to-one session. Like, part of the whole appeal of horoscope is you can get something that's personalized without having to actually pay for a personalized reading. Right? Like, you can watch the Leo King's presentation of horoscopes for this week, or you can go to whatever YouTube channel you like, and they'll tell you, Astrolata will tell you, for this month you're a such and such, and this is what, and this is for you. So it's like you're getting something personalized, but it's not personalized to you as an individual. It's somehow generalized a little bit. So it's not like to your birth chart, but it's going to be generalized to something about your birth chart. Okay, so there's basically 3 options for how you will individualize without having to go all the way down to making it literally individualized, making the transit reading literally individualized. Your first option is the sun sign. This is the easiest for several reasons, and this is why the newspapers and the Star Scrolls and the Cosmo magazines have it generalized to your sun sign. Because the sun is the easiest because everybody knows their sun sign, even if they hate astrology. Because all you have to do is know your birthday, because the whole year is based on the sun's movement. So it's always the same every year. Every day the sun is in the same position, because that's the definition of the zodiac. So it's very easy for anybody to know their sun sign. And that's why the newspapers started printing horoscopes catered to the sun sign. And yeah, that's literally why. Because most people didn't know their moon sign. I'm sorry, this question caught my attention. I have to ask it. I have to answer this. He says he heard that 18 degrees is the worst. You must have heard wrong. Or the person that you're hearing from must have spoken wrong. Because 18 degrees can't be worse. You probably heard wrong in the sense that 18 degrees of such and such sign may be the worst degree in that sign for a specific planet. That's probably the part that you didn't finish hearing all of, or the person didn't relate to you. But every planet has a certain degree in a certain sign. 18 degrees, there's nothing wrong with 18 degrees. This is crazy stuff. This is incredibly crazy stuff to say that 18 degrees is just a bad degree. Has no basis, in my opinion. All right, back on track. The reason why horoscopes are usually like, here's the horoscope for Leo. If you're born between July 21st and August 21st, then here's your horoscope. Right? That's one way of tailoring it down. We can do better than that. The reason why we can do better than that is because we love astrology. And we're not a newspaper, right? Now, Danny says all of them suck. It's BS. It's all generalized. It has to hit your natal placement or sensitive points. They can't suck that bad. Because they didn't go away. Like, stuff that sucks gets off the shelf. Because people don't buy it. Stuff that halfway sucks sticks around. Because people kind of don't have anything better. Stuff that sucks but there's nothing better that you can get will stick around. So I agree that in a sense, this is poppycock. To interpret a transit, like we did that series on how to interpret transits, people buy junk all the time, he says, because they don't have a better thing. But if something is totally crap, they won't buy it. There has to be something in it that gives at least the sensation that it's good. So there's something good about sun sign horoscopes. They do help people. But compared to having a reading with an astrologer who looks at your birth chart to see when these transits are affecting your points in your natal birth chart, it sucks. The generalized thing sucks compared to the thing, right? But that's what you're dealing with. That's actually why I'm beginning by talking about this. We got to talk about the scope of what we could expect from a horoscope. You should not expect that by reading a horoscope or by hearing me give you a horoscope that it's going to be able to tell you, be careful because your husband's going to try to kill you tomorrow. It's just not going to work. I need, even if I am a great astrologer, I definitely need to see your individual birth chart carefully for a long time to be able to say something like that. But if you want to hear a horoscope that says this is the trend of the, this is what you can focus on during this month, and this is how you can improve yourself this month, you can get that nicely by having a good astrologer tell you about how current transits relate to your sun sign even. But I believe that we should do better than just tailoring these to sun signs, because we're not a newspaper that's trying to reach 55 million people. I'm a YouTube channel, doing this on a YouTube channel that I got, what, like 10,000 subscribers now, which is kind of a lot. But we love astrology. We're not just casual cosmopolitan readers, right? We love astrology. I'm sure 99 out of 100 of you out there know your moon sign. Not, you know your moon sign, I'm sure, right? Is there one person out there listening right now that doesn't know their moon sign? So we could at least tailor it to the moon sign, and that would be even better, you see. And if you want to make fun of it, like Danny's saying, this stuff is junk. It's like making fun of medical advice that's just generalized. Nancy, you are just 22 minutes late. But you can always watch the recorded version. You could read generalized medical advice. It's not really the best thing to do. You should go to a doctor and have the doctor see you. But it's not that generalized medical advice is garbage. If the generalized medical advice tries to tell you, you have cancer, that's bullshit. But if the generalized, see, it's about how you deliver a horoscope is the difference between whether you are cheating somebody or not. If you're telling people that you can tell them specific stuff in your horoscopes, then you're a liar. It cannot be done. The people that are it's going to be accurate with, like was said in the chat, it's just because by chance it happened to trigger an actual planet. But if you tailor your horoscope to give them the kind of information that can be given in a horoscope, which is, look, this is the general thing that's affecting you, and this is how here's some suggestions with how to work with that positively, then the horoscope can be a real positive, useful thing, super useful thing. Actually, to be honest with you, from a Vedantic point of view, all the details in your life are totally meaningless anyway. The details in your life are just constantly changing. It's really more important to work on the broader issues. So really broader interpretive astrology is way more useful than highly specific predictive astrology. Even though everybody's going to think it's the opposite, that the guy who can predict when my nose hair is finally going to fall out is way better than the astrologer that just tells me this month you have this kind of energy affecting you, so you should try to act this. No, actually, it's the opposite way around. It doesn't make a damn difference when your nose hair falls out. Right? And you may think nose hair fall out is a funny example, but all the details in your life don't make a difference because they're asat. They're not sat. They're not permanent. They're asat. They're constantly changing. The thing which is sat is the way you feel about life. So the astrology, which is catered to how you're experiencing life, is way more important and spiritual and significant than the astrology that's predictive about when you're going to get a raise, get married, get a new job. Not that specific stuff is important sometimes, but overall, the general fundamental astrology is way more important and useful. All right. Hey, Sonia. Now, so I would like to try to do the readings tailored to your ascendants. I'm pretty sure that all of you out there know your ascendants as well. Now let's talk about this one thing, which is tropical or sidereal. Now, as you know, I'm not going to do sidereal zodiac signs. So if you want me to do sidereal zodiac signs, it's like wanting water to flow up. It's not going to happen. So if you know your sidereal ascendant, you should find out your tropical ascendant if you want to benefit from this series. Okay. However, if you do house-based interpretations, then it really won't matter whether you do tropical or sidereal, if it's whole sign. Okay, then let me talk. So what I want to do in this approach, or at least this is the way we're going to try to make it work, is we're going to tailor it to the 12 rising signs, not even the 12 moon signs, and not for sure just the 12 sun signs. Let's tailor this to the 12 rising signs. And let me tell you a little bit about what I think that Vedic astrology may have to bring into this mix. Okay? That is underutilized or so. First of all, it's the transit of planets through nakshatras, which are the sidereal stars, which are literally the stars. So, yeah, okay, so the reason why Danny is telling stellar, it's just stellar yoga arts, you just got a problem with the nomenclature. That's all. Nomenclature means how you're naming things. You're saying her ascendant is Libra in Vedic. You want to say your ascendant is Libra in sidereal. Vedic astrology doesn't equal sidereal astrology, because there's people who are not Vedic astrologers who do sidereal astrology, and there's people who are Vedic astrologers who don't do sidereal zodiac. Hello. And the Vedas, such as the Puranas, don't define the zodiac to be sidereal in the first place. So to say that the sidereal zodiac equals the Vedic astrology is wrong, and I think that's where he's getting on your case. So just when you want to say that your ascendant, the way most Vedic astrologers calculate it, is Libra, say it's sidereal Libra, and then you're accurate. Great. Okay, so what Vedic astrology can bring in is we can talk. That's what I'm going to do with Astrology Hub. Is I'm going to talk about. I love these questions. I can't get them. I can't ignore your questions. But let me just tell what I'm going to do with Astrology Hub is I'm going to use the nakshatras really way more than the zodiac signs to do my lunation month, which is all the way off in December. But you'll hear a preview of it this next week. So that's an important thing that Vedic astrology can contribute to horoscopes. The other thing is it's not endemic to Vedic astrology. It's ubiquitous throughout all classical astrologies, but the Indian astrologers are the only ones that still do it widely, except for the resurgence of Hellenistic people. But it's to consider the dignity of the transiting planet in terms of the Varga Vimshopak, as it's usually called, like in terms of how the subdivisions of a zodiac sign affect it. See, usually with the horoscopic astrology as it's commonly practiced by Western astrologers these days, they'll just say, look, Saturn has entered into Capricorn, Saturn's in good dignity. So, but what Vedic astrology can say is, well, the first 3 degrees of Capricorn, what is it? I should know this by heart. Capricorn is a cardinal sign, so the first 3 degrees of Capricorn are Capricorn, Navamsha. So the first 3 degrees of Capricorn, when Saturn's in the first 3 degrees, it's really in a good dignity, but the second 3 is Aquarius, it's also great, and then you get Pisces for degrees like 6 through 10, 6.6 through 10. So in other words, what Vedic astrology does, which used to be done in the West as well, is they divide the zodiac sign into the smaller segments. And I would like to try, after we get our basics down on and getting some horoscopes done, I'd like to try to bring that into the interpretation as well. All right. So here's one of these questions that I got. The question that I got that I thought was I felt like replying to. Please mention Rahu in the ascendant is demonic tendencies, question mark. Maria, from Maria Ortiz. So this is one thing you have to worry about too. It's a nomenclature thing. Like, what's a demon? If you go to the church in a rural town in Italy and ask them what a demon is, it's going to be way different than if you went to a person who practiced astrology in Greece 2,000 years ago and asked them what a demon is. Or if you go to a person in India today and ask them what a demon is, it's going to be much different than if you asked Varaha Mihira, it's like 17 centuries ago, what a demon was. Okay, so these days you still got the word demon around, but you're not understanding the word demon in the same way that the people who originally coined the use of the word understand it. So a demon is very powerful and gets a job done. It's focused on getting a task done. So is Rahu demonic? Yes, because Rahu is very powerful and very focused on doing things. It's very externalized. Is Rahu a guy with horns who swallows, who kills people, demonic, whatever, like, rah? No. If you have Rahu in the ascendant, are you going to be like, no. But if you have Rahu in the ascendant, are you going to be like outstanding, unusual, not really fitting in with the rest of the crowd that's around you, not able to be quiet and just rank and file? Yes. All right, so why don't we try to get started? So like I said, you guys might not have noticed, but hopefully from the thumbnail, that's right on top of my face right now, hopefully from the thumbnail you might notice that this is not an Ask Me Anything Q&A session. So how are you going to participate in this series? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, wow, look at this such and such transit. That, I guess, let's say, what if I said that means for last week you should have been feeling like this if your ascendant is X? And I'm going to say, is anybody out there with an X ascendant? Does that make any sense? Can you tell me? Can you give me some feedback? That's how I would want you to participate. So it's not really like you asking me questions. Now I'm going to be asking you questions. So, haha. You guys are used to just plugging me for questions, but now I'm going to be getting information from you. See how smart I am? I'm going to use my YouTube channel so that I can learn. All right? So shall we give it a roll? Try to get started? Now, let me tell you, I've never done this before. I've never tried to do a horoscope thing before. That's why I don't really know exactly what technique I'm going to do. That's why I want to do this first. I'd like to get into it. I see people love it. I see it's very useful for people. But before I just jump into doing it, I want to kind of get some practice. And I thought, well, hey, I have a whole bunch of people willing to talk about it with me, so why not do it? All right, so let's roll into this. Let's see. Let's grab a chart. So the place, now I'm sorry if this is not in the format that you're used to seeing it, but hopefully by talking about it, it'll start to make sense. So this is just a current moment chart. And let's try to just do a horoscope simply by, all right, we're supposed to do for last week, right? So instead of the current moment, let's do the weeks in terms of regular calendar weeks, like from a Sunday to a Sunday. So actually, why don't we do like from the previous Sunday up till now? So what's been going on for the past 4 or 5 days? We're going to see most of these planets are going to stick around in Capricorn because, Mercury is going to move around 1 degree a day. Venus is going to move around 1 degree a day. Sun will move exactly 1 degree a day, almost exactly. Moon will move a bunch, 13 degrees a day. K2 is going to be real slow. Saturn is going to be real slow. Jupiter is going to be real slow. So over the past week, if I go, this is yesterday, the day before yesterday, the moon changed. And then the day before that, now we're looking at, I wish it would tell me the weekday, January 8th. So you see Venus crossed. And if you remember from the video series that we did on how to interpret transits, this is called Sankranti, or the move, making a move. So Venus crossing into where ingress, it's a significant thing. And ingress is a moment in and of itself you would check out. But there's one thing, like something has shifted. You'll hear that term a lot I hear that term a lot when I hear people do horoscopes, is the term shift. So like Venus has shifted from being in Scorpio to being in Sagittarius. So hey, if astrology works, then there should be something that shifted this week, right? But let me tell you something about astrology. On this screen right now, there's a line right here. Oh, you can't see my mouse, I'm sorry. There's a line between Scorpio and Sagittarius. But in the actual universe, the real world, there isn't a line between Scorpio and Sagittarius. There's a fuzzy border. And so, just like if you live in San Diego, and the more you go south, the more it feels like Mexico. Hey, if you live anywhere on the West Coast, if you're in Seattle, as far as I know, it doesn't feel very much like Mexico. But as you come down to LA, it starts to feel like Mexico. And as you get to San Diego, it starts to really feel like Mexico. And when you're in San Ysidro, that's like on the border, you can see Mexico. But still, it's not Mexico, it's the United States. When you cross the border, then you're in Mexico. But when you're on the north, like in Tijuana, it feels kind of like America. You're in Mexico, but it feels kind of... So this is the way natural borders work. There is a line, there is a demarcation, but on one side of the line and on the other side of the line, it's blurry. The things bleed into each other. So you'll find this with zodiac signs, and it's also true with nakshatra borders, any kind of border. It's not a hard thing. It's not that you should expect, well, if astrology is true, then at the exact moment that when Venus moved out of Scorpio 29 degrees 59 minutes and into Sagittarius 0 degrees 1 minute, that something must have changed in my life. It's not like that. However, over the period of time of, like, say 6 days, 3 days, where it's crossing like where you're moving from San Diego through the border, through Tijuana, and then after that you're in Mexico, right? So you should notice a difference over that span. So in the same way, we should hope that during last week, earlier, there should be something new about Venus, right? So now this is also kind of independent from anybody's. This is interesting too. I mean, I'm telling you, honestly, I have never done horoscopes before, so I'm learning this at every step. So this is also something that strikes me as really interesting, is that maybe there's a way that horoscopes don't even have to be tailored to anybody's sun sign, moon sign, ascendant sign. It's just a fact that Venus represents what Venus represents, and if Venus is in Scorpio, you get a general energy that affects everybody, right? So what would you say if you get this straight? This is the way that I teach people with how to do birth charts too, is get your planet and sign straight first, then stick it in a house and interpret that. So let's take that same approach with a horoscope. Let's get a planet and a sign, figure out the interpretation or the range of interpretations we might make with that, and then stick it in a house relative to what we'll do is to the readers, the listeners, rising sign. So what would you say? You think in your mind about Venus in Scorpio. So here's interesting. Somebody already said that she didn't feel the ingress of Venus in Sagittarius. Doesn't mean that Venus didn't ingress into Sagittarius. Maybe your chart's not sensitive to Venus. This is another thing which is difficult. This would be difficult to make work on a horoscope scale. Yeah, this is good. I like what you guys are saying about Venus and Scorpio. Another thing that's difficult to make work on a generalized horoscope scale is the fact that, for example, in my chart, Jupiter is really important. So Jupiter's transits, anything to that Jupiter is really important. Anything that Jupiter does is really important. But in my chart, Mars is not that important. So transits of Mars aren't as, significant to me. Now, I think you're saying, look, I have a stellium in Libra, so I guess Venus is really important to me, but this ingress of Venus, I didn't notice it. So one thing is, I don't know, maybe your chart actually doesn't have an important Venus in it, or I don't know, maybe you didn't notice it. You see, this is the thing too, is I'm asking you to help me do the thing, but what I'll tell you a lot of times is, don't forget that you're just, like me, you're just a partial observer of your life. You may not notice something. And then when the astrologer explains what it is, all of a sudden you might realize, oh yeah, I did notice that. Then the other thing is, just in general about astrology and explaining what something is that there's a range of possibilities of what it may be. It should be in that range. All right, so what people notice, you guys gave good ideas of Venus and Scorpio. It's pretty sexy. It's kind of intense. It may be involving secrets. You don't have to put things in exact terms, because that limits you a lot. If you get the feeling for the thing. This is also why horoscopes are challenging, especially if they're written. Because, you put it in exact terms all of a sudden. It's better. Astrology is about symbols and seeing the way the symbols interact with each other. So if you can just think broadly, Venus represents beauty, love, relationships, sensuality. In Scorpio, represents passion, individuality, intensity. If you can just combine those, and you don't necessarily have to put it into words, right? So now Venus, yeah, also somebody's noted that this is opposite, right? Venus gets to be detrimented in Scorpio. It's opposite from its home. So then when Venus goes into Sagittarius, you get a change of flavors. Think about Venus in Sagittarius. And think about the things which actually wouldn't change, because Sagittarius is quite curious. It's a curious sign. Venus is curious. I'll show you a Vedic principle too that might have an important bearing on this. Remind me that I don't want to lose this session without showing you this one principle. Venus going into Sagittarius was still going to retain what was very similar to Venus and Scorpio. Venus and Scorpio likes to experiment. And it will keep that flavor in Sagittarius. But it's going to be more like Venus in Sagittarius should, under typical conditions, lose the secrecy element. It's still going to be it's going to be a fire sign, which is a little bit intense for it. It's still going to see. There's a lot of things, like the border between two countries that are very similar. It's different than the border between like two countries that are very different, right? So it's not that Venus went from Scorpio into Sagittarius. Something must be radically different. Maybe not. Maybe there's a lot of similarity between these two regions of the sky. But definitely something is changing in the fact that the sensuality is becoming more upward looking, and Sagittarius aims up, whereas Scorpio, it looks down with intensity and in. Yeah, it's a bit calmer, or like broader. It starts to have like a bigger idea. With Scorpio is like really focusing and fixing and drilling down into something. With the sensuality, let's talk about that, or relationships. So this is how you're starting to make, this is how I'm starting to make a horoscope. I'm starting to say, like, all right, Venus moved from Scorpio into Sagittarius. So I would write a horoscope to say something like, now take the passions which have been introspective and intense and deep, and start to focus them out and higher, and make your feelings of love become more broad and inclusive, but retain the curiosity. So you got the beginning of a horoscope there. But now you want to, there's a couple of steps to say, if you're a Sagittarius, if you're a Scorpio ascendant, etc., 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 etc. Oh, so let me show you this one principle. Remember I said I wanted to show you a principle? The principle is dignity, right? A guiding light on how to do interpretations of planets and signs is consider the dignity of the planet when it's in that sign. Oh my God, here we go again. Somisak says Vedic instead of sidereal. Anybody want to jump on him for that? So then we have, so the guiding light of how you interpret a planet and a sign is, you have to think about the dignity. Dignity means what? Dignity means how well behaved you are. Right? So that's why the term is used. How well is this planet behaving? If it has dignity, it behaves in a good manner, treats other people well. If it has no dignity, then it behaves in a selfish manner. It's harsh towards other people. Right? So you want to consider the deity of that. I believe my starting point for figuring out how to make effective horoscopes is to consider the dignity of the transiting planet. So what would you say is the dignity of Venus in Scorpio? If you're educated in like a Hellenistic or Vedic astrology, you would say it's detriment, which is a negative dignity. It's not the worst dignity. Fall or debilitation is worse. I think I got the term right. Debilitation is worse, but it's a lower dignity. It's to be in detriment. If you're educated in Vedic astrology, you would come to the same conclusion, but it would take you longer. Because what you would do is you would say, Venus and Mars are not friends. You have to memorize this whole table of who's friends with who, but it's basically simple that Sun is on one team and Saturn is on the opposite team. And Mars goes with the Sun and Jupiter goes with the Sun, which is easy because Jupiter represents religion, and Mars represents military and police, and Sun represents king. So religion and military, they stick with the king. And then on the other team, you got Saturn, who represents the common person, the proletariat. And who takes the side of the proletariat? The artist, Venus, or the lover, and Mercury, the intellectual. They like free speech and things like that, so they go with the Saturn. So you get two basic camps. There's variations and specifics and details in how some of the specific planets work, and that not everybody just has a friendship or enemy based only on that camp. But basically, if you remember that rule, you'll be right 70 or 80% of the time. Moon sits in the middle. So so Mars and Venus, basically they're on different camps. And then you want to consider how far away. This is the principle that I wanted to tell you. Consider, so also Jupiter and Venus, they're basically in different camps. So it's not really, not that much is changing when Venus goes from Scorpio in terms of Venus's dignity. It doesn't change too much, right? When Venus goes from being in Scorpio, it's in a sign that belongs to a planet from a different camp. And when it goes into Sagittarius, it's still on a sign from a planet that belongs in a different camp. But the interesting thing that you would do in Indian astrology is you count the distance of the dispositor from the sign. So for example, if you look at the chart that's on the screen now, when Venus was in Scorpio, Mars was in Aries. So that's, you start here with Scorpios: 1, 2 Sagittarius, 3 Capricorn, 4 Aquarius, 5 Pisces, 6 Aries. So that means Saturn is 6 signs away. That's too much. The rule is 2, 3, or 4 on either side is healthy. Too close is in the same sign, and too far away is more than 4 on either side. If the dispositor is too far away from the house or too close to it, it makes the relationship, the natural relationship, worse. But if the dispositor is in a good spot, it makes the natural relationship better. So when Venus was in Scorpio, Mars was 6 houses away, demoting the natural relationship between Venus and Mars. So Venus wasn't in good dignity, even the week before last week, even during the month before last, right? It was in Scorpio, which is kind of sexy, but intense and secretive, and like selfish sexy kind of thing, in bad dignity. Now, this week, it pops across the border and it goes into Sagittarius. Well, Venus's relationship with Jupiter, whatever it is, you know, you have to look it up on a table. I just program these things into my software, and then I don't remember them in my head all the time. But it's not going to be better than neutral. They're basically they're enemies because they're in different camps. Same thing with Mars. And then Jupiter is right there. That also demotes it, right? You want the dispositor to be 2. If Jupiter were in Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, or Scorpio, Libra, Virgo, it would improve the dignity of Venus. But because Jupiter is right on top of Venus there, in the same sign, it demotes it. So you get a situation again where, hey, you might be thinking Venus is changing this week, and it's changing, but a lot of things about it is staying the same. It's still not in the greatest mood. But it's changed from a situation where it's involved in intense passion to where it's going to be involved more of like ideals, because it's in Sagittarius now, and where it's going to look up and want to improve, instead of in Scorpio where it wants to dig in and experience. So that's the thing. What do you think? This week, over this past week, now I didn't say anything about what house it's in, you know, because it'll be in a different house depending. You can see if you're going to tailor the horoscope to sun signs, then you would be thinking this is Venus moving from 11th into 12th position. If you would tailor the horoscope to moon signs, I'm sorry, actually, no, you wouldn't think that. Like, it would be for each particular individual. If the individual is Capricorn Sun, then you would be thinking, well, this is Venus moving from 11th into 12th. It's different than if you're talking to somebody with a Sagittarius Sun, where it's Venus moving from 12th into 1st. So then you would tailor this idea of Venus, the passion and the sensuality is moving from being intense and experiential to being broad and improved mental. You take that basic concept, and now you have to tailor into what houses is this involving relative to the focal point. But before you do that, but it should be ubiquitous to whatever the focal point is, there's something to do with Venus moving from Scorpio to Sagittarius. So I think there's a scope for just making an untailored horoscope, like just in general, this is what happens. I would have to say, what do you think? Did you feel some kind that type of a shift where, and it might not have to think about the other ways, that other things that Venus represents. Just because the astrologer focuses on one doesn't mean that they wouldn't say, oh yeah, there's something else. If you bring up something else that Venus represents, like Venus represents perception because it's sensual. So instead of the perceptions being real inward focused, over the course of this week, the perceptions move more to being having more Sagittarian nature, which is having more digestion to them and wanting to consume more, wanting to bring in some new stuff from various sources. I mean, look, that's what I did. This week, like 2 or 3 days ago, I just decided, hey, I want to learn how to do horoscopes, and that's what I'm going to do. So the Venus is the Brahman. Venus is the one who learns because she perceives. So she's moved from Scorpio into Sagittarius. It's way more inclined to help you learn new stuff. And there's Jupiter there. It doesn't help the dignity of Venus to have Jupiter there because the dispositor in the same spot is too intense. But it's Jupiter. Jupiter is now close to Venus, so Venus is getting influenced by the learning feeling right now. So that seems to be another thing that's at play this week. Let me look and see what you guys are saying. Evelyn says yes. Tiffany says she hasn't really seen a difference with Venus so far. I just happen to pick Venus because it's moving. I wish we could do this every day, actually, but it wouldn't really work with my schedule. Because to learn something, it's better to do it like every day than once a week. Maybe next Wednesday we'll do a live session instead of a video and do this again, so it's not too long, because not too far apart. Because I would like to look at something like, well, look, Saturn is sitting there. The whole, all these planets are sitting in Capricorn. So you would want to talk more. That's just the way a conversation works. Sometimes you just get off on a tangent. But if you edit this thing, you would say, look, we should talk more about all the stuff going on in Capricorn. All these guys are sitting there for a long time throughout the whole week. But nonetheless, something about Venus should have popped in. So I would say, now let me ask you a question. Somebody said they felt it. So those of you who said you felt it, something similar to what I was talking about, tell me what your rising sign is. And maybe moon or sun. Can you just quickly do that? If you thought, yeah, I know what he's talking about. I felt that. The passion of Venus changed. It's not so passionate anymore. Now it's more like broad. And Venus changed. My perceptions changed, and my sense of romance and stuff changed. If you get that, then tell me, yeah. Moon, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Lagna, Scorpio ascendant, Libra moon. So these people felt it. 3 of the 3 people, Scorpio moon, Cancer moon, Evelyn. Evelyn, what's your ascendant? Most of the people who are replying now, who are the ones who said, like, yeah, that makes sense to me, are the guys who have the focal point, the individualizing point, in a spot that makes sense. Why does it make sense? A lot of people said Scorpio. Well, it makes sense. If Venus is moving out of your focal point, then you would feel that. Or if you have Sagittarius as your focal point, and Venus is moving into your focal point, right? It will be more impactful on you. That's interesting. Also, Cancer would be moving out of trine, potentially. So that was interesting. So you would say so the theory that I'm coming away from our first session with is this. We should use the theory of angles and trines. as the ancients have done, which is to say, angles are significant and trines are significant. So if your rising sign is angular or trinal to the thing that we're interpreting, then it's much more likely that you actually feel this interpretation that we're making. That's the point that I'm going to come away with from the first session. All right, I like this a lot. I hope you like it too. I'm even thinking, let's see, next week I have an interview with somebody. Let me see who it is. Next week I'm interviewing Nadia Shah. Isn't that great? So I'm going to interview Nadia midweek. So maybe that will be that. If I'm in the mood, I might do a surprise YouTube live session on your Tuesday. I'll be interviewing Nadia on Monday. Most of you are in that time zone that it would be Monday. So if I'm in the mood and I have free time, then I'll do one on your Tuesday, and we'll look more at this same chart that we've been looking at today. And then next week, definitely, again on Thursday, we'll do this week, the next week going up. All right, guys. Thanks. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to doing it again.